Hello everyone, welcome to my tutorial on Scratch. Today we are building a ship versus submarine game. It's a very simple game where you are in control of a ship. You can move left and right to dodge the missiles from the submarines, and you can drop depth charge bombs on the submarines as they move below you. There is a playable version at the below link here on scratch.mit.edu, so just copy the link below and you can put it into your browser and start playing to get a feel of how the game feels like. So let's try out the game right now.
Get ready.
So now that you have seen the game demo, let's go through the player controls that we will be programming. The controls is just 3 buttons. We have the left arrow on your keyboard to move left. The right arrow will move right, and pressing the space bar will fire the depth charge bomb, which will sink to the bottom of the sea. To get started, first let's download the lesson 5 files. What you can do is open your browser and enter this long link, which will download a zip file from my website. Alright, now when that is done, you should extract the zip file into your working Scratch folder. Remember where you are putting your Scratch folder, because that's where you will import the Scratch resources for your project. Alright, next start up your offline Scratch editor and we're ready to begin. And here's a list of the variables that we will be using for the game. The variable score will store the current game score. the depth charge status is a variable to remember have we launched a depth charge. If we have done so, we don't want to launch another depth charge until the first one is exploded or has disappeared from the game. Alright, and next you have the difficulty level, and this is a variable that we can use to increase the level of difficulty as the game progresses. We have the game status. A game status here will help us to store information if the game is starting or has it completed. And we have another variable, ship_x, which is used to store the X position of your ship. It will be useful when we will use that variable to launch the depth charge. And next you have the X_destination, and this is the destination X position of the submarine destination. So we'll be having submarines moving from one side of the screen to the other side, so we need to store the X position of where the submarine will move towards. And next we have a new data structure called list, which is used in Scratch to store a list of information. And I will have two lists, one called missile_x and the other called missile_y. And the missile_x would store the list of submarine missile X position, and the missile_y stores the list of submarine missile Y position. And it is used for the when the missile is being launched from the submarine. This list will contain the position of where the submarine is, so that we can create the missile at the originating position of the submarine. And we will cover this as we go along. Okay, so let's get started with bringing in the resources that you have just downloaded from my website. And here we are, starting off with a blank Scratch. The first thing I would do is to import, well, let's do the background first. And we go to the backdrop tab, and we are going to bring in my resources. So this is the folder where I have download and unzip the files from my lesson 5 zip file. And I will bring in the sky background here. Alright, and next I will bring in the two walls. Okay, well, actually I should bring in the sea background. So in this case the sea is actually a sprite here. I'm just going to move it so that it fits over the bottom part of the screen. Okay, that looks about right. Next I have I think I would like that to, let's delete this and bring it up again, so that way it's gonna be on top of the sea sprite. And I'm bringing the left wall and the right wall right now in my game. And the reason why there's this wall here, it helps me to hide the submarine as it appears, and it seems to be coming from the side of the wall behind as it emerges. Alright, and let's bring in the ship. Okay, and I would like the ship to be at the top of the water, and let's bring in the submarine. Okay, bring in the missile. Okay, and the depth charge. Okay, so we've got all the sprite that we need for the game. Along the way, we might have to re-import some of the music files and also the explosion animation. But for now, we should be able to start putting in some code to organize the game. So next thing we have to do is make sure we save this game frequently so that we don't lose any progress in the event that we actually crash the computer, or let's say the game actually crashes. In case, doesn't mean that it's going to happen. So you can actually do a save here, file, save, and in my case I've already saved it as ship versus submarine tutorial. You can save it with a new name if you like. It's always a good habit to save your project regularly. Alright, now next step we're going to do is to create the variables. So I have under the with the stage selected, I'm gonna select the script and then data here, and you have a choice of either make a variable or make a list, and I will make a variable, and in this case I've only an option for all sprites, so which is fine. This variable can be seen by all the different sprites in the game itself. And let's go and take a look at the list of variables. We do have 6 variables, and the first being score, depth charge status. Let's do 2 at a time. Score, okay, and depth charge status. Okay. What else we have? Difficulty level and game status. Difficulty level. Is that correct? Yes, difficulty level. Alright. And game status, and ship underscore x and x underscore destination. Ship underscore x okay, so that's all we need for setting up the variable that is owned by the stage. For the last variable, which is destination, x underscore destination, you should choose the submarine sprite and click make a variable. Now, when you do that, you have an option to create this variable that is for all the sprite or for this sprite only. In this case, we want to choose for this sprite only because this information is only used for that specific submarine. There you go. So there's a concept of a local variable versus a global variable. In this case, we want it to be local to this submarine. Remember that in the game, you're going to have many submarine. So each of the submarine will have its own local variable, and they need to keep it local because we don't want all the submarines to share a single X destination, which is not the right thing to do. Okay. So you can see that this is local variable because it says submarine colon destination underscore X. So we know that this variable is only available to the submarine sprite. Alright, so I'm just going to uncheck this these variables because I don't need them to be displayed except for the score, because I would like to see the score throughout the whole game. Alright, and next we need to make two lists, one being the missile underscore X and missile underscore Y, and this will be used for all the sprite. Oh, I can actually bring it back to the stage sprite so that it'll be easier for me to organize the variables. It's owned by one sprite. Okay. Okay, very good. So we now have two lists and they are obviously empty right now, so I don't need to display them. And I think that's all the variables we need. Let's take a look. Yes, that's all the variables we need. Alright, the next thing we need to do is we should initialize each of these sprites to make sure that when the game starts, we would like them to be in the correct position. It's possible that sometimes when you're adjusting the game sprite, for example, the left wall could be moved out of this place accidentally. So we actually like them at the start of the game to hold or initialize back to the correct position. So let's do that by adding some code. Now we don't need the default sprite here, so I'm just going to remove that by doing a right click and click on delete, and it's done. Alright, so right now with the C background sprite here being, it's not really a background, it's actually just a sprite here. I'm going to initialize it, and I will go to the event that says that when the start of the game is being clicked on this green flag, I would like my sprite to be moved to its default location. In this case, it's so if you notice that the current position of the X and Y is already filled in for you, and I can just show it to you that when I were to move this slightly, you can see that the X and Y gets updated accordingly. Alright, so I'm just going to move back here. That's what looks about right. X being -1 and Y, X is 1 and Y -1. So I like that to be its default position, and I'd like it to move behind. So if you go under the looks, you can choose go back one layer. I don't know if this helps. I was looking for go to back, but this should help us to move it behind so that it doesn't blocks the other sprite here. And okay, so let's go to the next sprite here. We have the left wall, and the same thing. I would like it to go to the default position. In this case, it has already been prefilled for me, x minus 209 and y minus 38. And I would like this sprite to go to the front. Alright, and let's continue to do that. And this would be having a default x210 y minus 38. That looks go to the front. And for the ship, I would like this to go to a default. Well, let's make this 0, so it's in the center. Okay, and for the looks, it should come to the front here. Okay. And for the submarine, it should, when it starts off, it actually should be hiding. Okay. And for the missile, it should be made smaller. So why don't we just click on the run to see how it behaves now. And there you go. So this is how it looks like. The ship is now in the correct position. It's brought to the front of the different sprites. Okay, and I am going to, let's see if I can actually move that. No. Alright, let's reinitialize that again. Okay. I actually need to resize the missile, but it's hiding somewhere in there. So I'm just going to shift that a bit, move the C out of the way first, and I'm going to shrink this missile to about this size. Okay, and okay. Oops, did I actually shrink the C? Yeah. Okay. So let's shift that back here. Well, actually I don't have to, because when I start, it will actually bring the C back into the initialized position. Now for the missile, I would like it to disappear, and it should go into hiding. And the same thing for the depth charge is it should also be hiding until the ship launches the depth charge. And I will do that here. And I think we're good. So when I click on the green flag, everything will be initialized. And there we go. Now we're ready to start to add the program for the game. Alright, so let's get ready to start to add some code. I have the backstage, the stage sprite being selected, and in here I do have 2 backdrops. I don't need the default backdrop, so I'm just going to delete that. Alright, so now remember that the stage is actually like another sprite, and what I like to do is to add some of the code that manages the game with the stage, so it becomes easier to locate where the code is that is controlling the game. Alright, so I will put in the usual, where in the green flag it's started. The first thing that we need to do before we start writing any code is we want to make sure that the variables that we have created are initialized correctly. So I am going to put a few of these set variables, and I have 4 variables that I want to set to its default value. So the first being the game status. I want it to be play. Alright, so the game status tells me if the game is currently in the playing mode or is it in the game over mode. So if it's game over, we need to have code to handle the cleaning up the game, reset the values, and so on and so forth. Alright, and let's set the depth charge. So the depth charge status tells me if there's a depth charge being drifting down to the bottom of the sea, and when we first start up we want it to be free. It tells me that there's no depth charge and we are ready to launch. The player can release a depth charge. Alright, and next we have the score. It's very important. We set the score back to 0 when we start the game. And then we have the difficulty level, and I'll show you how we would use the difficulty level later as we progress. So I will set it to 1. That's will be the most easiest level. Okay, and I like to have some background music when the game starts. So let's see if we have some. Let's bring in a game music that I have created. There you go, game music. Still loading. Okay, so this is how it sounds like. It's just a looping music that you can just go on and on and on. And what we're going to do is we're going to put a repeat until, and we're going to check for a condition when the game status is set to game over. We want to stop playing the music. Okay. Otherwise, we would just like the music to continue playing just in the background. Alright, so the next thing we want to do is we would like to add in some code to check when the game is over, and I'm going to be using a message. So when I receive a particular message, let's say when the ship gets destroyed, the ship sprite will send out a message that the game is over. So I would like the stage to be listening for this message, game over, and add some code to clean things up when we receive this signal. So I'm going to set the game status to game over 2. Okay. And next I would like to stop all the sound. Okay. And then I would like to add the code to adjust the difficulty level as the player continues to play the game, because as the submarine move across, it's just going to start off firing off 1 missile, but as you play further and further along in the game and you continue to win, I would like to increase the difficulty. So I like the submarines to start to launch 2 missiles when they move from one side to the other side, and over a period of time, it's as you continue to survive in the game, I would like the submarine to launch more missiles, and that makes the game more difficult, and makes it more challenging as you play further along the game. So I would just add the code just to adjust the difficulty level, and I will do a 3 times, basically just to increase the difficulty levels. And what I will do is check. Well, actually, what I'll do is I'll wait 30 seconds. If you play 30 seconds into the game, it's going to bump up the difficulty level. And I'm going to add this code to change the difficulty level by 1. Alright, so this difficulty level would then be used by the submarine, which checks that how many missiles it should launch as it moves from one side of the wall to the other side. Alright, and the next thing we want to do in this in the stage here is that I want the stage to launch to create the submarine throughout the game. Okay, so it's like the manager that manages the game and creates how many enemies to and increase the speed of enemies being created or slow things down. So they manage the flow of the game here. So the same thing, I would add a listening for event when the green flag is clicked, and I'm just going to wait 1 second before I start to create all the submarines. Now I want to import the sound get ready. Okay, and I can just play it here. So let's play that sound cue before the game starts, so the player is ready to get ready to start the game. And let's just wait for 2 seconds before we start to create the submarines. Okay, and we're going to create a clone of the submarine. Okay. Now, when I've hit this code, I would like the game to continue creating submarines until the game is over. So I will do a repeat until, and I want to wait for this condition where the game status is equals to game over. Okay. And now I'm going to do another condition check, where in this case I will again check if the game status is equals to play. And let me explain shortly why I'm doing this, because it sounds like I have just checked that the game status is game over, then I check again the game condition before I run the code in here. That's a good reason, and let me explain shortly. Now in this loop I'm going to wait the number of seconds. I want it to be random before I would create the next submarine. So I'm going to do a pick a random number here, maybe between 2 to 6 seconds before the next submarine will to be created, and I will create the clone of a submarine. Okay, and the reason why I have another condition check in here is because this loop could still be running when I receive a game over message. So at the point when I receive a game over message, this could still be in a wait state, right? It could still be waiting, and then it could still create a submarine when it's the game is over. All right, so I've added in this check just in a hope to try and stop any submarines to be created when the game is over. So it's a matter of synchronizing the message because the other parts of the code is still running when the game over message is received, and this looks a bit awkward when the game is over and another submarine appears. So this code will try to stop that from happening. It checks again that we don't have to check the status again before it creates the clone. Okay. Alright, so now let's go to the submarine, and we're ready to add some code for the submarine. So remember in the stage, it's going to create the submarine throughout the whole game. Now the submarine will need to appear behind these walls, either from the right wall or from the left wall. And if it appears on one of the wall, it has to move to the opposite wall in a prefix speed, and along the way it needs to launch a missile, and which will move upwards and explode near the edge of the water. And if the ship is on top of the missile, it will be destroyed. So we will first need to check when I start as a clone, because that's when the stage sprite is going to create a clone of the submarine. And I'm going to check again for the game status. So let's put that in. And the game status should be play. And what I like to do. Oh, okay. I should do something. I shouldn't be using just an if condition. I should be using an if then else. So what happens if I'm started as a clone and it turns out that the game status is game over? I should delete this clone. So I don't want it to appear after the game is over and continue to move across the game. So I want to delete the game if I discover that the game status is game over. Alright, so I will like my submarine to have a different look. So let's do that. Oh, before I do that, let's do something on the costume. Now, remember that the submarine, when it appears, it's facing to the left. So if I were to create a clone of the submarine on the right, I want it to be facing the right. So I'm going to just make a change here. So I'm just going to call this submarine left. Alright, and then I am going to duplicate this, and I will call this submarine right costume. Okay. Okay, so the right, I should do a flip here. There you go. Okay. So let's come back to our code, and I like the submarine to actually have a different color, so that they, just to make it a little bit more interesting. and I'm just going to change the color. So I'm just going to do a change color effect by a random number. I don't have to be a fixed 25, and let's do between 1 to 100. Okay. Then next thing we need to do is to determine should it appear on the right side of the wall or from the left side of the wall, and I can do that by having a if condition, and I am going to pick a random number, okay, and compare it. So if the random number is less than 6, okay, so it's going to create a random number between 1 to 10, and if it's less than 6, I would like it to appear on the left. So in this case, I will set let's see, okay, here we go. Set the X position, and I have a starting position to be -237. So I can actually show you right now where the minus. So if you pay attention to this X value here, that tells me where my mouse pointer is located, the X position, and right now this is about -237, which is at the edge of the screen. Okay, so I know that this is a submarine that's going to travel from left to right, so I will want to make sure it's using the costume submarine_right. So I will do a switch the costume to submarine right, okay, and then I will need to set the X destination. Remember, this variable here is a local variable. You can see it's owned by each submarine. It has its own destination_X. So this allows each submarine to have its own destination X, and in this case I wanted to move from -237 to +237, which is over here. So you can see where my mouse is pointing. The X value right now is 237, so it's over on this side here. Okay. Oh, you know what? I think I need to do a if then else, because if the random number is greater than 6, it should be appearing on the right side here. So and it's actually very similar to set, of course. I'm just going to duplicate here, and the X will be starting on the right side, which will be from 237, and it should be having a submarine_left costume, and it is going to move towards the destination of -237. So I'm just going to put it into the under the else block of code here. Alright, so we can now bring this back into the main block here. Okay, so next thing we need to do, remember that the submarine that we have created is in a hiding stage. So I mean it's invisible. So we need to show it. It becomes visible. Now next thing we need to do is set the Y position. It has to appear between a range of Y values. So I'm going to do a set Y position, and it will be random. Alright, and I'm going to, let's say, use the Y. And if you look at this Y value of my mouse, I'm just going to put it between minus 150 to how about here, say 8 to minus 150 sounds about right. So that's minus 150 to 8. Okay, we should put it before we run the show command. Okay, now that we have initialized where the submarine will appear, and it knows where it should glide to. Alright, so let's put a glide control block, and let's set some random speed. So I will use another random number generator here, and let's put between 20 seconds to 30 seconds, and it is going to move towards its X destination, X underscore destination. That's where we have previously set in the control block above. For the Y position, we don't want it to change, so I'm just going to put it back the current Y position, which is also set earlier. So the Y position doesn't change, it's just going to move from one side of the screen in the same Y position to the other side of the screen. Okay, and I think that's it. So let's go ahead and test the code. So what we should see is submarines moving from one side of the screen to the other side, and let's see how it goes. Let's test it right now. Okay, so it's gonna wait like 2 seconds, and I think it's appearing, but it's probably behind the blue screen here. So I am going to go to the front. When I create that, go to front. Let's see if that appears now.
Get ready.
Okay. Alright, so it's coming to the front of the wall. I'm going to add one code, which is to go back by one layer. Let's try that again.
Get ready.
That didn't work. Okay folks, so I have just did some testing to just figure out why the submarine is appearing in front of the wall. So the first thing we want to do is to remove back take out the code that says go back one layer and go to front, and we don't need this. What we want to do is over the background here is to put in this code, go back 2 layers. So if you pull and drag over here and set 2 layers, alright, and that tells it to appear 2 layers behind. And for the left wall, I have a go to front, and the right wall go to front here. So for the submarine, you don't need to do any of the positioning of the layers, so I'm just going to put this away. Alright, so everything remains the same, and let's give it a try now.
Get ready.
Alright, so it's working correctly. It's hidden from the left wall. It's going to appear. So we should see some submarines on the right also. Yep, that's good. Okay. Alright, so we got the basic movement of the submarines. Alright, next thing we want to do is to add some code when we receive the game over. We need to clean up any submarines that's out there, and just do a delete this clone. Alright, and next we would want to add in code to create the missile that is gonna be, shooting up to the top of the sea for and explode, near the ship or on the ship. Okay, so I will put in a listening for a when I start as a clone, and I will repeat. Now remember that we had that difficulty level, the variable difficulty level that will increase in value as the game progresses longer and longer. So we want to launch more and more missiles throughout the game if the player is getting very good at the game. Alright, so I will do a repeat, and I will use the difficulty level to tell me how many times I want to launch a missile. Okay. And of course, each time I launch a missile, I want to have a wait in between so that it doesn't launch all the missiles at the same time. And let's put a random time between 3 to 6 seconds before we launch the next missile. Something that we want to check is we want to make sure that if the submarine is over the left, or if it's crossed into the wall, we don't want it to launch a missile. So we should just add a code to check, right, that the X coordinate is we haven't exceeded or got out of the screen. So I can do that by checking its X position, and I'm going to put a AND operator, and I will check for the X being the X position. So let's put that in. Alright, so I want to make sure that the X position is over this wall here, so I could do like minus 192 to positive 192. So let's do that. So only when it's within a range of its X position is between minus 192 to 192, then we can allow the submarine to launch a missile. Now, when we want to launch a missile, we need to store the X and Y position of the submarine, so that the clone of the missile will know where it should appear. Okay? And we can do that by using the list. So remember that we have the two lists, missile underscore X and missile underscore Y. And we are now going to add those values in. I'm just going to put this here, and one being the missile X. So I want to store the X and Y position of the submarine. when it launches the missile. Okay, and let's do a wait. I'll say 0.1 second. Okay, before we actually create the clone of the missile. And the reason why I do a wait to make sure that these values x and y get registered with the list. Okay, because the missile, when it's created, it's going to look for these values. Okay, and we will look into that when we start building the code for the missile. Alright, and I think that's what we need for now. Alright, so let's go on to the missile now. Okay, so now we are ready to add the code for the missile, and the first thing is we need to check here is the missile should be hiding when it started. When this game starts, we also would like the missile to go to the front of all the layers. So when it appears, we can actually appear in front of the submarines or in front of the ocean here. All right, so let's look for the event control. So when I start as a clone, because remember the submarine will create the clone of the missile, and okay, we'd like to also import some of the costume. This looks a bit big. Let's do something here. We're going to adjust the missile first. Okay, this okay, it looks about the right size, so I don't think I need to adjust that. Let's see.
Get ready.
Okay, so I have a size. Earlier I saw the size of the submarine, and this is the size of the missile. They look proportionate. I don't think I want to shrink the missile size anymore. So I am good to remove this debugging block here and just put a go to front and hide it right away. Next, I need to import some costume, which is the explosion. So remember, when the missile reaches the top of the water, it's going to explode. And I'm just going to bring in the 5 explosion sequence, and I just need to adjust that a bit to explode 1, 2, so 3 should be next, 4, then 5. And I also need to make sure it's in the center. So this is my center of my explosion, and that looks good. So it's going to go like this, then like this, and like this. Okay, so this is slightly off. I'm just going to bring it off here, and then it's going to be the center. That's alright. So let's take a look as we run through the sequence manually. This, 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 and this. Okay. That's about right. Okay, so when I first start off, I will want to make sure I put on the costume of the missile with a trail. Now I need to initialize where the starting position of the missile, and I will put a go to a specific X and Y. And if you remember that we have the list here, the missile X_X and missile_Y, that's where the X and Y position is recorded. So I'm going to retrieve that from here. Retrieve the first value of the list, and this will be the X. Okay. Alright, so after I've retrieved the value of the X and Y, I need to delete them. Okay. So that the next submarine can populate this list. Alright. Okay. So we need to also make just a slight adjustment here, because we don't want the missile to appear directly on the submarine. I like to give it some offset to be slightly above the submarine. So let's move this missile about 10 pixels higher. Okay, and we're ready to show it. So let's go to looks and run a show. So it's going to appear, and it'll appear just above the submarine when it's streaming from one side to the other side. Okay, so next we need to have the missile move up to the top, and I am going to use a repeat unto loop here. Okay, and I'm going to check when the missile is reaching to the top of the water. Okay, so I will check that the missile, I will check the Y position. And let's go there here. Now, exactly where should I start the explosion sequence when the missile comes towards the water? So so again, I'm reading off the Y value of my mouse, and I think if it's about 68, say 68 sounds about right. So if my Y position of missile crosses the Y position being 68, it should explode. Okay, and if it hasn't reached the top of the water, it should continue to move upwards. So I'm going to change the Y position of the missile by 3. Okay, and just do a slight delay. So it looks like the missile is slowly streaming through the water up to the top. Okay, and so this loop is going to exceed when the Y position is higher than 68. Now what should happen next is we want to have a sound of the explosion. So let's go to import the boom bang sound. I'm just going to play it out here. There you go. That's how it sounds like when the missile explodes. So I will play this, and then I want to loop through the costume, and remember there's 5 costumes, so I'm just going to repeat 5 times. So let's look at the costume. It's going to go from explode 1 to explode 5 pictures here. So I will do a next costume, and in between I just put a wait of 0.1 second. Okay, and then we can delete this clone here. So the missile is done. It's going to appear and travel up to the top of the water. It's going to explode. Okay, and I think we're good for the missile code. Oh yes, and also when we receive the game over signal, we should delete this missile. So it could be in the midst of traveling up, and then the ship got destroyed, and it's game over. So we should just delete those missiles that's in flight. Okay, so let's go back to the submarine, and I think we can start to see some missiles being launched from the submarine when we test it right now.
Get ready.
Okay, so it looks like the missile is reaching above the water level, so I just need to adjust that. Maybe by about 3 pixels. So it'll just be say about 16, say 62, maybe 63. Let's give it a try again. So we want to explode the missiles just below the water.
Get ready.
Okay, that looks about right. And we have the explosion happening, so everything is working correctly. So now we are ready to put in the code for the ship. The ship needs to respond to your left arrow and right arrow. We need to have a new variable called the x speed, and this will be a local variable, and this will actually just store the what is the current x speed, so that the user doesn't have to constantly be pressing the left arrow key to move left. So if they have pressed a couple of times, we record the current left speed, and we would just let the ship continue to move at that speed. And if they want to slow down, they would need to press the opposite arrow key, and we store that speed using the this variable called x speed here. And I've created just for this sprite only, and I don't need it to be visible, so I'm just going to uncheck that. And first thing we would need to do is to when the game starts, let's let it wait for 1 second. All right, because we know that the stage sprite is initializing all the variables. So we want to wait 1 second, make sure that the variables are having the correct value. And the same thing is we want to repeat a loop of instructions until the game is over. So the same thing is we'll be watching for the game status when it reaches the game over status here. Okay. Alright, so what we want to do here is we want to watch for the left arrow key, and we can do that by in this loop we want to check if the left arrow key is being pressed, and that would be, here you go, left arrow key. And let me put it here first. Now when the user is pressing the left arrow key, the x speed will should be a negative value, so we're just going to minus 1 to the x speed in each loop, so that the x speed will decrease, well, taking on a negative value higher and higher until a certain max negative value, because we don't want the left moving speed to be too excessive. So we want to keep a bound, a limit to how much we can have the left moving speed. So we can do that by having end condition here, and I want to check that the x speed is greater than a certain value. So let's put that in here. So we don't want it to be let's say less than -5. Okay. Alright. So for in here, if the left key is pressed, basically we will just reduce the change the x speed variable by -1, and you will see later how I would actually use the value of the x speed to move the boat. But for now, if we continue to press the left key, the x speed will continue to move, be reducing to the left a negative value until it reaches a maximum of -5, and what happens is that will be the maximum speed on towards the left that we can move. Alright, and I think I should also make sure the x speed is set to 0 at the beginning. Okay. Now what we will need to do is to check that if the ship is moving to the left, and when it reaches the wall, we should set the x speed to 0 so that it stops moving to the left. And I will just check for that condition here, and I will set an end condition check, in this case the Exposition of the ship. If the Exposition of the ship is less than, let's say somewhere here, say -170, okay, which is somewhere here, the center of the ship. Okay, we want the ship to come to a stop. Okay, and the other condition I want to check is the x speed is negative, so that shows me that the ship is continue to move to the left. Okay, so I will need to only run this instructions if the x speed is negative value. So that if the x speed is negative, it means it's having a speed to the left. So if that's true, I want to set my x speed to 0. Okay. I think this is pretty much all we need to do to handle the left arrow key. For the right arrow key, it's actually very similar in nature. In this case, we are going to be checking for the right arrow key, and we are going to be just doing the reverse here. And in this case, I want the right side of the speed to be not more than 5. Okay, and in this case, I would increase it by 1. This should be negative. and so that should be set. Okay, so this should be greater and 170. And I just gotta change the sign around here. Okay, so what we're gonna do is now in this loop we have instructions to handle the left arrow and the right arrow. In each of the loop we would also want the ship to move, and we are now going to do a move instruction, and as you can see right now it's actually moving too much here, but let's set this to X speed here, and we want it to, in each loop we would like to just rest for 0.1 second so that's not too fast. Okay, let's give it a try, and let's see if now I'm gonna press the right arrow key.
Get ready.
That's good. So it stopped at the right hand side. Now I'm just gonna press the left arrow key. Just gonna check the right arrow key now, and then the left arrow key. Let's see if it reaches the limit. Oh, that's good. So it does stop when it reaches the edge of the wall. So it is working as expected. Okay, so what we would like to do next is to add in code to detect that when the missile hits the ship, it should show that it's being damaged, and then end the game. So I'm going to put in that condition check right now. So let's put it out this block here. So if I am touching a missile, alright, I will want to set the speed to 0, because I should stop the ship from moving, and I will need to play the game over sound, and let's bring in that sound. I can play it right now. So that's an announcement that the game is over. And let's put that here. So once I touch the missile, I will stop the ship, play this sound, game over, and then I will broadcast the game over message to all the other sprites. Okay, so that should take care of the ship being hit by the missile. Now we will also need to put in code to release the depth charge. Now remember that this depth charge is going to, when you release, it's going to drift down the sea, and if it touches any submarine, it will destroy the submarine. So, and we're going to be checking for a spacebar key. So let's add in another if condition here. Let's okay, and I am gonna check for two conditions. The first is if I am nope, I'm not doing it such here. I will be checking for a key. There you go. So if the space key is being pressed, and I want to make sure that the depth charge status is free, because if it's not free, that means there is already a depth charge being released. So I just want to have only one single depth charge. So I will check for this variable and make sure it is free. Alright, so I will then set the ship_x variable to the ship's current X position. Okay, and then I will need to update the depth charge status. So that tells the game that there's a depth charge that's being released. Okay, and I'll set that to active. Alright, and next I'm going to create a clone of the depth charge. Okay, there you go. Alright, that should pretty much be everything I need for the ship. What I'm going to do is to test it, but I probably can't test the depth charge because the depth charge doesn't have any code yet. But I can test if the game is going to end if I were to touch the missile. So it should set the ship to speed 0 and it play the sound game over. Alright.
Get ready.
Okay, so I'm just going to move the ship close to the missile and see what happens when it hits it. Okay, so it did run the code and broadcast the message game over. So now let's proceed to the depth charge. Okay, so now we are with the depth charge and we are going to add in the code, and we're going to start out by listening for when I start as a clone. And now remember, when the clone is created, it doesn't know where to appear. So if you recall from the ship, I have saved the Exposition of the ship to this variable called ship_x, and I'm now going to retrieve it from this this variable and use that for my Exposition. So I'm going to pull that here. Okay, so that's the Exposition. Now for the Y position, I will, look at roughly which height I should create the depth charge. So I'm just pointing now to seeing the value of Y being 62. That sounds like a good position to launch the depth charge. Okay, and I want to make sure that so I should include some of the explosions here. I'm going to bring in the rest of the explosion animation, and I have 2, 3, 4, and 5. Here you go. Okay, so same thing. I just need to center all the explosion. Make sure they are all looking in the same direction. Okay. Alright, so That's good. So what I want to do is to make sure I switch to the costume depth charge. I want the depth charge to be pointing in the correct direction. In this case is 90 degree. So I'll put that in here, and I'm now ready to show it. So I will have to look, sorry, it's over here and it will appear. Okay, so what happens is this is now initializing how the depth charge should appear. Now I would need to have the depth charge drift down to the bottom of the sea, and it will slowly rotate in a clockwise direction. So I am going to do a forever loop. Okay, and in the forever loop I'm going to check first thing we want to check is that the depth charge has not crossed the bottom of the sea. If it did, then we will want to delete this clone. So I will have a if condition, and we will be checking for the Y position of this depth charge. Okay, and I will, so at the bottom here it's about maybe 168. Sorry, minus 168. Okay, so the moment it crosses the Y value equals to minus 168, I will want to set the depth charge status to back to free again. So that allows the player to release another depth charge. And for this particular clone, I will want to delete it. Okay, so that takes care of the depth charge dropping to the bottom of the sea. Now, the other condition that we need to check is the depth charge touching a submarine. Alright, so what should we do here? So let's see. So we can now use the touching control block, and we want to touch an object known as the submarine, a submarine sprite here. And when that happens, we want to update your score. So this is your score. We want to increase it by 1, and I'm just going to select that to score here. And the same thing, we want to update the variable depth charge status to free so that the player can launch another depth charge. We will also need to play the boom, which is the explosion sound, and let's play that sound here. So no, we shouldn't use this. We should just play this sound so it doesn't wait, and then we will need to repeat the animation of the explosion. So we will basically loop through 5 times and call the next costume, which is if you look at the next costume, it will be the explode 1, explode 2, explode 3, explode 4, explode 5. So it's going to go through the next costume of explosion 5 times. We want to put in a slight delay between each costume change. And finally, we can delete this depth charge. It has done its job. It has updated the score, and it's played the boom sound, play the explosion. Right? So that's pretty much we need for the depth charge. The additional code we need to put in here is to have the depth charge fall down to the bottom of the sea and moving in a clockwise direction. So let's put it like 3 degrees here, and then we will want to change the y by -3. So it's going to continue to drift down, and also just put a slight delay in this loop. Okay, and I think that's it. Of course, we would also want to check if we receive a game over. Any depth charge that's still in the midst of drifting down, we just want to delete it. Okay, so that helps with the cleanup. I just want to save this game. Okay, so let's give it a try.
Get ready.
So I am now going to release a depth charge. Okay, so it is exploding when it touches the submarine. Now, when I try to press another depth charge when there is a depth charge release, I can't do that. So until the existing depth charge has been detonated or has disappeared, I can't launch another depth charge. Okay, so that's pretty much what I need for the code for depth charge. Alright, so now we need to add some code to the submarine, so that when the depth charge drops on the submarine, it will cause the submarine to explode. And I'm going to add a new control block that says when I start as a clone, I want to be listening for the depth charge touching the submarine. So I will put in a forever block, and I will check for the condition when the depth charge is touching the submarine here. Okay, so when the depth charge touches the submarine, this block of code is going to execute, and I would like the to show some animation of explosion. So same thing here, I'm going to bring in these 5 pictures of the animation. Just gonna play it through. Okay, and just to center that, let's zoom in. Okay. Okay, so let's check. Alright, so let's go back to the code here. So I will like the explosion to be bigger, and what I can do is I can increase the size, because the submarine, when it explodes, the submarine is bigger than all the other objects like the missile or the depth charge. So making it bigger makes it feel like the whole submarine, a big object, has exploded. So I can do change the size by, let's say, 10%. So the ship gets bigger because it's going through the explosion, and I would need to set the color back to 0. So this is important because when the submarine was created, I had a different color. I changed color effect. So this will also change the color of the explosion. So I don't want that to happen. So I want to change the color effect back to 0. And then I will switch to the first explosion 1 picture. And I will repeat this 3 times. Shape 4. Same thing, I want to add a delay. And when that's done, I will need to delay the this clone here. So this is the submarine. It's going to be deleted, and it will of course play the animation of the submarine being destroyed by the depth charge. I'm just going to put a delay to this loop so that it doesn't spin on this loop too fast. So that's everything we need to handle the explosion. So let's give it a try now.
Get ready.
Just releasing the depth charge. Looks good.
Game over.
Okay, so one thing I want to adjust is the depth charge looks a bit big, so I am planning to reduce its size. I can't seem to get this. Let me just make it appear with a show command. Okay, and I want to shrink this. Okay, let's try it again. Okay, that looks about the right size with the depth charge. It's not too big. Okay folks, so I've done some debugging, and I did discover that the missiles were appearing in the wrong places. What I should remember doing is to add these 2 codes: delete all of missile X and delete all of missile Y when the game starts. So this allows the make sure that the list is empty. And the other change I have is the submarine. At the end of this block, I need to put a delete this clone. So this is when the submarine travels from one side of the wall to the other side, and when it reaches its destination, I need to delete that submarine. Otherwise it's just going to be there behind this wall, and it's going to take up resources from the game. Alright, and I have also remove this wait 0.1 second from this block here, so there's no delay in creating the missile. And let's give it a try. But before that, I need to create one more sprite that's to say a message game over, and I can paint that sprite, and basically I just use the text and write game over. Okay, that's it. Let's put that down here. Okay, it's the game over message. Okay, and I will add the script to let's bring it to the center here. When the game starts, I want to hide this. Alright, and when I receive the event, when I receive the game over message, I will want to appear. Alright, and that's pretty much it. So let's give it a test run right now.
Get ready.
Okay, so looks like the game is working as expected. So to have some fun with playing this game and challenge your friends to get your high score. So I've got a high score of 12. So I'm pretty sure that you can beat my score here. So folks, that's all I have for my lesson number 5. Do like my video if you like the tutorial, and I'll prepare more lessons in the coming weeks. Thank you.